Hey, welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a video, and if this one helps you out a like, means a lot to us. Let's get into it. Most significant savings in a household budget come from visible decisions, switching to a cheaper phone plan, canceling subscriptions, buying store brand instead of name brand. Those changes are real and worth making. But there is a separate category of savings that comes not from visible decisions, but from small, repeated habits in the kitchen that individually seem trivial and collectively add up to hundreds of dollars a year without ever feeling like a sacrifice. Today, we are going through the kitchen habits that quietly save the most money over time, the ones that compound across 52 weeks of cooking into a number that would surprise most households if they added it up. The first and most impactful single habit is one most households do not practice consistently. It is called first in, first out, and it is the inventory system used by every professional kitchen and every grocery store for the same reason. It prevents perfectly good food from being pushed to the back of the shelf and forgotten while newer purchases get used first. The older food at the back of the fridge, the pantry shelf, or the freezer is always the food that ends up being thrown away. The fix is mechanical. When you bring new groceries home, move existing food to the front and put the new purchases behind it. Every time you open the fridge or pantry, you reach for the thing that has been there longest. This single habit, practiced consistently, reduces food waste by a meaningful amount without changing what you buy, what you cook, or how much you spend at the grocery store. Related to this is keeping a designated use first section of the fridge, a specific shelf, bin, or container where anything approaching the end of its useful life gets placed so it is immediately visible and prioritized. Most households lose food not because they do not care, but because the item was somewhere in the fridge, was not visible, and was forgotten until it was too late. Making the items most at risk of being wasted the most visible items in the fridge is a simple structural change that does not require any ongoing discipline beyond the initial setup. Making stock from scraps is one of the kitchen habits with the most direct cost impact for the least effort. Vegetable trimmings, onion ends, carrot peels, celery leaves, garlic skins, herb stems, mushroom stems that would otherwise go straight into the bin are the raw material for homemade vegetable stock that is superior in flavor to most store-bought versions and costs nothing beyond the water and energy to cook it. Keep a bag or container in the freezer and add vegetable scraps to it over the course of a week or two. Then simmer them in water for an hour, strain, and refrigerate or freeze the resulting stock. Chicken carcasses from roasted chickens do the same job for chicken stock. A household that uses homemade stock for soups, sauces, risotto, and grain cooking replaces 3 to 5 cartons of store-bought stock per month at $2 to $4 each, which is a saving of $75 to $240 per year from trimmings that were previously being thrown away. Using cooking fat and drippings is a connected habit that most modern kitchens have abandoned and that previous generations understood instinctively as a money-saving practice. The fat rendered from cooking bacon, the drippings from a roasted chicken or a pan of sausages, the caramelized bits left in the pan after browning meat, all of these are flavor and fat that can be saved, refrigerated, and used in subsequent cooking instead of reaching for cooking oil or butter. Bacon fat stored in a jar in the fridge adds flavor to roasted vegetables, fried eggs, and sautéed greens that cooking oil cannot replicate. Chicken drippings deglazed with a splash of water or wine become the base of a pan sauce in 60 seconds. The habit of saving rather than discarding cooking fat replaces a meaningful amount of purchased cooking fat and adds genuine flavor value at zero additional cost. Measuring cooking oil rather than pouring freely is a habit with a small per-use impact that compounds significantly. Most people pour cooking oil directly from the bottle with no particular attention to quantity, using substantially more than is needed for the cooking task. A standard pour for sautéing vegetables might deliver 2 to 3 tablespoons when a single tablespoon would be sufficient. At the frequency with which most households cook, the additional oil used through unmeasured pouring adds up to roughly an extra bottle per month. Over a year, the habit of measuring saves the cost of several bottles of cooking oil, modest individually but consistent in the way that all small repeated savings are. Freezing at peak freshness rather than waiting until something is about to go bad is the habit that most directly extends the effective life of grocery purchases. Most households put food in the freezer after it has already deteriorated, the bread that has gone stale, the meat that needs to be used today, the fruit that is overripe. Freezing at this point saves the item from the bin, but results in lower quality food coming out of the freezer. Freezing at peak freshness, the bread on day 2 before it has staled, the meat the day it was bought if it will not be used in the next 24 hours, berries while they are still perfect, means the food that comes out of the freezer is genuinely good. The practical shift is thinking of the freezer as a preservation tool for good food rather than a last resort for food that is almost bad. Using overripe and aging produce in cooked applications rather than discarding it is a habit that saves the cost of the produce while also providing the raw material for genuinely good food. Bananas that are too spotted to eat comfortably are the best bananas for banana bread, muffins, and smoothies. The sugar content is higher and the flavor is more intense. Tomatoes that are very soft are at their best for sauce, soup, and roasted applications where texture is irrelevant but flavor is concentrated. Strawberries that have softened are ideal for compotes and sauces that go over yogurt, oatmeal, and pancakes. The habit of routing aging produce toward cooked applications rather than the bin requires knowing what each item is best used for in its various states of ripeness and is one of the habits that has the most direct impact on reducing the food waste portion of the grocery bill. Making your own spice blends rather than buying pre-mixed blends eliminates one of the most dramatic markups in the grocery store. A jar of pre-mixed taco seasoning, Italian seasoning, curry powder, Cajun seasoning, or similar blend costs $2 to $4 for a small quantity of spices that are entirely composed of individual spices available in the bulk section or in larger, individual containers for a fraction of the cost per gram. Making taco seasoning is combining cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, and oregano in a jar, a 30-second task that produces a better and more customizable blend than any pre-mixed version and costs roughly 80 to 90% less per equivalent quantity. The same applies to most common spice blends. Cooking in batches rather than from scratch for every meal is a habit that saves money in two ways simultaneously. It reduces the energy cost of cooking since a larger quantity in one session uses proportionally less energy than multiple separate cooking sessions, and it significantly reduces the frequency of reaching for takeout or prepared food on days when there is nothing ready to eat and the friction of starting from scratch feels too high. Having cooked grains, roasted vegetables, a pot of beans, or a tray of baked chicken portions in the fridge at the start of the week means that assembling a meal on a weeknight takes 10 minutes rather than an hour. The takeout order that gets placed when nobody has the energy to cook from scratch is one of the most reliable and most expensive outcomes of a poorly stocked fridge. Batch cooking removes the conditions that produce it. Regrowing vegetables from kitchen scraps is a habit that borders on novelty for most households but has genuine practical value for certain items. Green onions regrown in a glass of water on a windowsill will provide several additional harvests from a single bunch. Place the white root ends in water and they regrow to usable height within a week. Lettuce, celery, and herb stems can be regrown in similar ways. The quantities involved are modest, and this is not a strategy for replacing grocery shopping, but for items used as garnishes, flavor additions, and fresh herbs where a small continuous supply has meaningful value. Regrowing from scraps is a genuinely effective habit. Keeping the freezer organized with dated labels is the infrastructure habit that makes most of the other freezer-related habits work at their full potential. A disorganized freezer produces food that is forgotten, buried, and eventually cleared out as an unrecognizable mystery. An organized freezer with clearly labeled and dated items produces meals from food you already own instead of grocery runs for food you do not. The investment is a roll of freezer tape and a marker, and the payoff is the elimination of the freezer waste that quietly costs most households money every time they clean out. The annual savings from building these habits consistently: reduced food waste, homemade stock from scraps, saved cooking fat, measured oil, freezing at peak freshness, batch cooking that replaces takeout, and better freezer management adds up differently for every household depending on current habits and grocery spend. For a household spending $500 a month on groceries, reducing food waste from the industry average of 30 to 40% to something closer to 10 to 15% through these habits represents a saving of $75 to $150 per month. Adding the stock, fat reuse, and takeout reduction brings the total annual impact well above $1,000 for most households, from habits that add no time to the week and require no additional purchases. Drop a comment with which habit you are going to start with. We genuinely read every single one. And if you want us to do a full video on batch cooking, specifically what to cook, how to store it, and how to turn it into a week of meals, let us know below. Hit the like button if this helped, subscribe and tap the bell if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.